All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert with the Martin Eiden team. I'm very excited today. This is the last Thursday of the month, so Whit Prouty is our guest host, our permanent guest host, and he has Jake Zacuto of Zacuto Group or Zacuto Partners, I forgot.
Zacuto Group.
Zacuto Group. It sounds better than partners. Zacuto Group. Which is commercial real estate, what's going on in LA. So Whit, I'll let you take it away and I'll be your sidekick, which is my favorite part of the job here.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Martin. And Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. As Martin said, you guys are the Zacuto Group. You're a commercial real estate brokerage and advisory firm. And you're going to speak to us today a little bit about what's going on in the commercial real estate market. So let's start off just a little easy. How about you tell us a little bit about you personally, and then bring it into the professional part, and then we'll get into the state of the market. How's that?
That sounds great. So, well,
all right.
I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys today, and hopefully we'll have some knowledge to share. To give you some background on myself, I've been in the commercial real estate brokerage industry for 17 years. Graduated from UCLA. I've been LA born and raised, which is becoming increasingly unusual.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
So I can say I'm an LA native, and I feel like that's, part of my passion, for being in real estate and being in a business of property and neighborhoods and places is, this has always been my home, and it's a place that I love and am passionate about. On the personal level, I'm a father of two beautiful boys, 2 and 3 years old, or 3.5, I should say. And
Wow.
So they keep us very busy, and between them and work, and my wife, that's my life.
Yeah, you have the beginnings, you have the babies, and then you have the baby part of your own brokerage as well too, which I believe you started a few years ago. Yeah, right, so around the same time as the the child phase.
Might as well do it all at once.
No, it was not planned. It was not planned that way. We were definitely trying at the time, and the firm's 4 years old now. So it is still a young firm, very much so. But basically, I left and started my own firm, which was the hardest, most stressful thing I've ever done. Definitely don't recommend it to other people. And then my wife, literally a month later, was like, "I'm pregnant." So it was just,
wow.
It was kind of all.
That's an incentive to succeed, right?
It definitely was. It's funny you say it truly is. I mean, there's definitely no motivation to work harder and give yourself a kick in the tuchus than having a kid.
Right.
I was going to say much success from all of that, all at one time. The new brokerage has been very successful, and the starting of your family as well. All good stuff.
Thank you.
So
yeah, we've been very fortunate. We've pretty much grown steadily every single year. This year is definitely, even with everything going on, it's still our marquee year and is a significant growth from last year. So, we're continuing to push the boundaries and grow the firm.
And that's incredible. So the year of COVID, this incredible year. Let's talk about what is going on in Q3 with commercial real estate, retail. You're going to tell us a little bit about retail, a little bit of office, industrial, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So, this has definitely been a shock to the system, unlike anything we've ever seen before. I think that, parts of the economy and the way that real estate cycles for commercial work, they usually take a long time. It's like, when I remember, being in conference rooms during the financial crisis, negotiating large lease transactions, and landlords were not moving their rates, even though the stock market down 2,500 points. They were like, well, this isn't the stock market. My buildings are full. My tenants are all paying their rent. I feel for you. I'm watching, the news right now as well, but, we just aren't suffering. This is different. Wow. Because what's happened now is you had large masses of tenants immediately stop rent payments. You have basically small businesses failing left and right as a result of the lack of federal funding from PPP. Those effects are being felt immediately. You're seeing it in the job market the last few weeks with the latest jobs reports. So, the economy, the impact on the economy and the impact on the real estate economy for commercial has been very different than residential, I know, but for commercial, it's been very severe. So, with that being said, it's also one of these things that there's still so much uncertainty because you have that question of time. Like, could this bounce back quickly? And, people are not going to want to work from home forever. When this thing first came out, all my technology executive friends and clients were like, this is the best thing that's ever happened. Our KPIs are up. People aren't so happy. I'm happy. I don't even want to go to the office. And that was what it was like for like 30 to 60 days. And then, what started happening is the productivity started flatlining and started going down. And now you're seeing a lot of companies walk back their statements on remote work. You're hearing, major corporate executives come out saying that they're really looking forward to getting their people back into the office. You're seeing even companies like, Facebook and big firms that are taking huge office leases. They just told their employees you can work from home forever, and they're signing giant office leases. So I think it's a sign that, people do want to get back to work. I think that as you start to see things normalize, and a lot of people are going to hold out and probably try to not take space as long as they can. But as soon as their competitors take space and they start doing better than they are because their teams are more cohesive and they're more productive, it's going to force people to get back into a rhythm. And I think that that's going to help restore the office market. But with that being said, it's going to be a long way to climb. So, I don't think, I think you're going to see definitely a short-term bounce because everybody's going to want to come back at once. And I think we're already seeing that. The last 6 months for office leasing has been terrible. And office leasing is starting to pick up very quickly. We're seeing tours on space, anything under 3,000 feet was still transactional where you had firms of less than 10 people, but anything over 10 people, firms with HR liability, there was just very little demand for space. And we're now seeing that change. So, and people are getting in front of the market. So,
what types of industries are taking up that office space? Is there a niche there or something in particular? Are they professional corporations or what are they?
So you have a few drivers. I think that, technology has always been a big part of what is part of the reason why the Los Angeles office market got so hot to begin with. And, a big reason too, as to why it's cooled. But you are still seeing the VC sector has been active. There's still lots of companies getting funding. And the thing you have to remember too, it's very easy for like large law firms, where, the partners and the compensation levels are everyone's making over $200,000 a year. They've got a decent home setup. But when you're dealing with these young technology companies and you've got a founder who just raised, $5 million, $10 million, and he's in his mid-20s, his employees are in their early and mid-20s. The reality is that they don't have the same setup. They don't have a personal home office, in their 3-4 bedroom house that they can set up in and have a nice, comfortable workplace. So, the office is important because that's, many people need that place. And they also want the motivation of getting up and going and being able to work. So I definitely don't think the office is dead. I think the market is definitely going to suffer. And I think tenants' preferences and choices are going to be radically different. You're definitely going to see spaces with operable windows, with ventilation, that have less access points and places to commingle with other unrelated companies. There's going to be demand for companies to have those kinds of sanctuary spaces, but those are very few and far in between. Most of the office space is vertical, not horizontal. So, it'll be interesting to see how those dynamics play out.
So it's interesting you mentioned about, I'm sorry, Whit, I just wanted to jump in.
No,
about
go, Martin.
companies seeing productivity go down. When did that happen? So for the first 30, 60 days, people were excited to be working from home. And then they realized there was kind of no limits of corporates asking you to it's 9 o'clock, who cares, you're home, do the report anyway?
Yeah,
Or what?
one thing also got to remember too, like I'm being very generalizing. There's many
Mm-hmm.
firms that will not go back to the office because they work just fine remotely and they don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a great many of companies that do, and I think that what the large change is going to be is that I predict that when you start to see companies go back to work and you start to see the differences in cohesion, productivity, corporate culture, ability for managers to really manage their workforce, and the companies that are together versus the companies that are distributed, I think the companies that together are going to be more effective. So, I think that ultimately, I think competition is going to drive people back to the office.
Interesting.
Because they're going to eventually realize that, the competitors who jump back to work and start going to work every day are going to run circles around them.
Yeah, let's be realistic. People absolutely are more productive. They're more creative, all this kind of stuff, actually, when they are in person with each other. There's something about that connectivity that on a human basis that, wow, this is a wonderful medium, Zoom, Google Hangouts, all of that kind of stuff to get us through this time. It really doesn't produce the amount of energy that being in person does produce.
And it's funny, just like querying our own team, because we talk about this with our own team all the time. Look, I've been remote for a long time. We're talking now about getting back together and figuring out a way to safely and productively do that. But especially, the people that suffer the most from remote work are the young people, the people that are longer in their careers, established, have their routines, have their teams in place, their clients in place. They can get by from anywhere. And I think remote work is going to be a tremendous resource for a lot of people that are more senior in their careers to be able to spend more time at home, less time in the office if they choose to. But for young people, they miss being around the older people. They want to learn from the people that have experience. They want to be around the energy. They also thrive off of being around each other. And, I think being at home all day in a confined space and not being in a place surrounded by your peers, it hampers growth. And at the end of the day, many companies are, they're built from the bottom up. And, you need your pieces at the bottom have to be just as strong as your pieces at the top. And at a certain point, that foundation is going to break down. And the companies that build a stronger foundation, in my opinion, are going to outperform. And that's again. So I think office space will come back. I think it's going to hurt for a while, and I think that you're starting to see rates. Rates, by the way, we're talking about rental rates for a minute, and we should talk about retail and industrial as well. But office is a very interesting topic for people. Office rates, interestingly enough, deals are getting made. Landlords aren't dropping rates. So for institutions. A lot of institutions are really still holding out till early middle of next year to see what happens, because they don't want to drop their rates and devalue their portfolio. Have the financial staying power. What happens? Equity, smaller landlords, we are seeing are being much more immediately adjusting to rates and willing to make deals. So, a lot of it, when people ask, how are deals getting made? Where are deals getting made? It's very situational. I'm definitely seeing incredible deals getting made for people that want to lease space today. But it's not every deal. You still got to find the right deal. And that's where having a great broker is an important resource.
There you go. That's true. Shameless plug, but I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Whit.
Retail. Let's talk a little bit about retail.
So retail, I would say, is a little bit scarier. Obviously, retail also, I think that, office space, you don't really see as much because a lot of it's, in the sky and, you don't know what's going on the 32nd floor. Retail, we all see, and retail is definitely a little bit of a bloodbath. So, the biggest challenge to retail and to the ground floor is the decimation of the small business. And, I think that, you look at the stock market, large businesses are doing great. Large businesses are just fine. They have access to capital, they have staying power. It's the small businesses that are getting really, really hurt. And, I can tell you, we advise a lot of retail landlords. We are building out currently an asset management operation. And I will tell you, my MO is you got to keep your tenants right now. And I think in general, if you're a landlord, you got to do everything you can to keep your tenants, especially retailers. It has never been a harder time for a retailer. Most of these guys, if they're doing well, they're doing 30 to 50% of what they did before. If they're doing fantastic, they're doing 70%. But that's a pretty big drop, because for most of these retailers, it's that last 30% that's their profit, where they start to get profitable. So, if they're doing 30 to 50%, they're nowhere even close to profitability. So it's, the fact that they can't generate the revenue at that basic level is going to have catastrophic effects on retail rental rates. So, you still have that same problem that we talked about in office, where a lot of guys aren't ready to drop their rates. They want to see what's going to happen, but that is going to be a much longer, slower climb back, in my opinion, because it's so small business driven. And small businesses have, unfortunately, have really, they've fared the brunt of this thing. And we see it with a lot of our retail clients. A lot of them cannot pay anything at all. Many office tenants, even if they're suffering and not even using their offices, they're still paying their rent. Most retailers have not paid or can't pay or paying very little. So, that's a big problem. And most of from a legislative standpoint, there are many retailers, depending on where you're located, are protected and allowed to defer their rent, but that still means they got to pay back rent that they probably don't have the money to pay back. And without any federal stimulus to support them, they don't have the PPP really helped these businesses hang on for a couple of months. As soon as that ended, that's been the drop off. And I don't even think we've seen the middle of that. I think that without any more support, I think that we're going to see the retail environment worsen. And, so it's very important for any retail landlords that are listening. You got to do whatever you can to keep your tenants, because it's going to be hard, even if you got a tenant that's not paying, but they've got the hope to come back. If that space goes empty and that business fails, for that space to get rented, someone's probably gonna have to start a new business. And it's a lot harder to start a new business than to restart an existing one.
So what are you advising your landlords to do to keep them in? You're working something out, like at least, cover my taxes and electric bills and stuff, or a short-term reduction of rent, or what are you suggesting?
It's very case by case. So, look, when I'm in, we do a lot of tenant work, we do landlord work as well. So I have the perspective of advising across the range of different needs. For when I'm talking to a landlord and we're talking about retail, and frankly with office as well, you really got to know your tenant. You got to know their financials. You got to understand how they're securitized, who the guarantors are, the big picture, and to a certain extent, you got to learn about their business. So when I'm dealing with a retailer, the first thing I want to see their credit card processing. I want to review probably 18 months of credit card processing receipts. I want to know what they did Q1, Q2 in 2019, and I want to compare that to 2020 so I can see the real impact. You can fudge a lot of numbers in sales. You can't fudge credit card processing receipts.
Interesting.
So I always start there. And then I like to complete the picture and understand their business and see how and why they're suffering and how much they're suffering. But also make sure it's a business that I also believe is going to come back, because you do also have issues that, look, there are many businesses that will not come back at all because they can't, and they just won't make it anymore. So, those businesses are hard to help, but there's a lot of businesses worth saving. And I think that, landlords need to be cognizant of that and intelligent about those decisions, because it's going to be a lot harder to get a new tenant than to restart one that's been there before and has made it in a particular location before. And you're going to want that guy to stay.
That's a really good piece of advice. Go ahead, Whit.
Is there any distinction between indoor retail, outdoor retail, strip malls, all that kind of stuff? Because those obviously segment into three very different types of retail.
Absolutely. Look, your mall tenants are going to fare very differently than, the tenants that are in a Caruso mall, which is largely outdoors. So, I think that there's just like anything, nothing's created equal. I think the the hard part about the real estate industry is that, you know, it's not commoditized like other things. Every deal, every space, every tenant is unique. Every location is unique. So, you know, you really have to have someone with expertise that can understand all those variables, break that down, and on a case-by-case basis, help you understand, you know, how to make the right decisions.
Okay. Let's talk about industrial, which
Yeah,
very
so
different segment as well too, and I think more on the bright side maybe.
it definitely is. I mean, look, there is some contraction because there's contraction everywhere, and obviously the trade issues have not been good for industrial. But I think that's starting to improve. But generally speaking, industrial has been doing fine. Rental rates on industrial are still strong. Demand is strong. You know, on any of our properties that we're dealing with on the industrial side, it's probably the bright spot of the business. We've done some decent sized distribution deals. Any of the spaces that we're leasing that are high quality, port adjacent, you know, type product. I mean, the demand is, there's multiple offers. So, you know, it's still very much a strong market on the industrial side. All the guys I know that are operating 3PLs for third party logistics operations, servicing Amazon and, you know, a lot of those kinds of needs are expanding, of course, because Amazon has obviously been expanding. Virus pandemic has done is it's what would have probably taken 5-6 years of growth. So, you know, by having that 3 months of that compression of just allowing that industry to grow so rapidly is sustained demand.
Right. Well, we've talked a little bit about it, but because we've talked a little bit about leasing, but how does the leasing market compare to the sales market and the differences between those two marketplaces?
So the sales markets have, you know, look, it's very fragmented because on one hand, I will tell you the sales market has actually been decently strong. Most of the deals that we've been able to get done the last 6 months that have been profitable for us have all been sales. And I would say the frequency of sales that we're doing is probably in relationship to leases. I'd say we're doing more sales than leases right now. It's usually the other way around by a big factor. Just because more companies and there's just more lease transactions and sales transactions to begin with. So for us to do more sales is unusual. The drivers for that are largely owner users. So, you know, a lot of companies are taking advantage right now of low interest rates. SBA financing is the lowest I've ever seen it in my career. You can get 85% leverage, 2.7% financing, amortized and due payable in 25 years. It's just unheard of. You know,
Cheap money.
That sounds like a residential loan. I know for houses, people are like, oh, I just did that. For commercial, you know, 4.7% would have been normal. So, or 3.75% would have been normal. 2.7 is extremely low. So what that basically means is that most businesses can, if they can come up with a 15% down payment, they can buy a building and they can own that building for basically the same or less than it would cost them to lease it in most scenarios. Typically, I would say for like the last 17 years I've been doing this, that's not how the math works out. You know, maybe outside of Los Angeles, but in prime markets in LA where real estate is expensive and hot, you know, you're looking at maybe a 20 to 40% premium in your operating cost to own a building versus rent it. So the fact that you can own it for the same or less is really driving interest in buying buildings. And we are very, very busy selling buildings right now to people that are buying them for occupancy.
Wow, that's incredible.
Your crystal ball, we've seen a little bit into it, but, and also too, you mentioned things like there are some big tenants taking out monster space. I've read about a lot of technology companies in New York taking a big space that was vacated in Hudson Yards and in the city where they had these developers had large tenants in place that then had to bail because of COVID, and then they've been able to replace them with the technology companies. Also, too, in Los Angeles, those same technology companies had large spaces that they were renovating or repurposing within our own community that have not come online yet as well too. So let's see into your crystal ball and what you think is going to go on, and maybe how office space is going to be used, etc.
So look, I believe that you're going to see the markets pick up as we get towards a vaccine, and as we start to see people go back, just see life normalize on some level, which I think it's safe to say that, you know, it's very possible that occurs over the next 6 to 12 months in some capacity. It's already improving, but I think that we will see life start to, and it may be living with the virus. It may not be that the virus is gone. It just may be that we accept that the virus is here, and you know, we just have to find a way to live with it until it can be eradicated. As that happens and people start getting out more, and, you know, in commerce comes back at the street level, I think that you're going to see real estate rebound relatively quickly. I don't think it's going to be a rebound that we're back in 2019 again, but I don't think we're going to be in 2010 again. So, you know, I think that's kind of the big fear that I don't think we're going to see 10 years of growth eradicated. So, you know, I think that you were already seeing a major uptick in activity. Granted, anything from virtually zero activity is an uptick, but we are seeing a solid uptick in activity. It's definitely, you know, as a brokerage, someone running a brokerage firm, you know, we're profitable again. And that's a very exciting place to be, because I've never not been profitable. So, but it was a very hard 6 months getting it to where we are today. And, but we're transacting. So, you know, I think that as long as that volume stays active, I think that the market will get healthier and things will improve. In terms of, you know, how people are going to work in office space, and I think that you're going to see the needs of the office certainly change. Remote work is not going away. So, you know, my predictions about people getting back to work and doing things, I don't think it means that they're just going to be doing it the way they did before. I think that the concept of the office being a place of socialization, a hub, is going to be more of how it's used than your desk is over here and this is my office and your office is over there. You know, I can tell you that, you know, we're seeing a lot of models right now where companies are taking space, and, you know, maybe the CEO has his own office, that's his office, but beyond that, everybody else, just, you come in and you find a place to sit down for the day, and that's your space for the day. And I think that kind of model is going to be very typical, because you're probably also not going to see people coming in every day. So, you know, you may see people coming in 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. Hours may become more flexible, but I think both workers and companies are going to want to have space again. They're going to need space again. And you certainly have businesses, by the way, that they just have to have space. I mean, medical offices can't work remote. So, you know, you have a certain caliber of business that needs facilities. We do a lot of work in technology and research and development, robotics. Those companies can't work remote. You know, they need to work on equipment, they need benches, they need places for people to collaborate and work together on scientific projects. So, you know, those kinds of businesses, and those businesses are expanding very rapidly right now. So, you know, we have a number of clients in that sector, and they've been taking on significant growth, and some of the bigger deals we've done the last 6 months have been in those sectors. So, you know, I'm optimistic that that's going to continue to be positive drivers, and you know, it certainly can't get worse.
I agree. I think the worst is definitely behind us. I see that here in New York too. Every day, more and more people are coming in, and the big joke is that garages are all filled now. It used to be garages were empty, but now everything's jam packed.
Absolutely. One last question. So we're starting to see developers in the single family home market actually start to come back online as they get a little bit more bullish. Where are you seeing development in the commercial sector?
So, you know, it's hard because when you're talking about commercial development, they're usually pretty large scale. So, you know, it's, you know, you're talking about projects that could be, you know, 100 to $200 million projects. You know, when it's committed, you know, the big challenge is financing. For new projects, obviously, anybody trying to build a hotel right now is probably not going to get that project funded. So even if they have the equity raised, there's no bank that's going to touch the construction financing on that deal. Multifamily, there's still plenty of funding out there. Lots of guys trying to build. And obviously housing in LA is still at a tremendous shortage. So that's going to continue. Office space, in industrial, again, solid demand drivers still. And, you have a lot of old warehouse space that people want. They want new, they want 30, 40-foot clear buildings. So, I think there will continually be demand for new development, high quality industrial. Office space, probably not so much. You may see development, though I speculate there is still opportunity for office development, but I think it's for developing very unique spaces with lots of fresh air and things that other buildings, frankly, don't have. The problem is that to build new office space, it's very expensive. You have to build lots of parking in Los Angeles. It's extremely costly to build office, which means you got to get a huge rent. And the challenge you're going to have in office space right now is that there's a lot of sublease space. There's a lot of vacancy, and it's going to be very hard to get back to those peak rents that are going to make someone excited to build brand new office space where they have to get a high rent. So, I think that those economic drivers are probably going to hurt office development growth more than anything. Though I do think there will be demand for different kinds of buildings, and those buildings don't really exist today. So, and it's largely because of the codes. The codes of energy efficiency and other things have basically made it very difficult to build, offices with operable windows and features that people would really want. But maybe as a result of this too, we may see that soften and allow more flexibility.
This is a fun topic for me, quite frankly, as a residential guy, hearing about the commercial side and really how it affects us. You have been wonderful. Thank you, Jake Zacuto. Really appreciate your expertise in our little half hour here. And,
yeah, absolutely, Jake. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
We'll
have Martin wrap us up.
All right. Well, thanks. Jake, it was great. We learned a lot today, and I really appreciate the candor and the insight. And thank you, everybody, for joining the Martin Eiden team with Ask the Expert series. Next Thursday, we're going to be talking to a Compass broker in Westchester, what's all happening in the hot suburbs. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.